this heaven?
No. It's Iowa.
From high school to international wrestling, on the mat and beyond, this is the Potentially Dangerous podcast with the guys from IAHSAA.
If you're a fighter, you like a fight. If you're an American, you like a fight. If you're an Iowa Hawkeye, you know you're going to get a fight.
Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and all your podcast-friendly apps. And follow us on social media platforms at IAHSAA. Time to strap it up and get to the show.
All right, folks, welcome to the Potentially Dangerous podcast. This is episode 117. We have the A squad on today, with Eric Schares and Lars Underbakke. I want to say that this is IAHSAA's second best podcast next to the Shots Fired podcast, which me and Mac Ryder usually do every Monday night. It's posted every Tuesday morning. But, I don't know why we're on tonight. I guess they have a lot of faith in us. We have Nick Ryder here behind the scenes trying to direct us, so it should be a lot of fun tonight. So how you doing tonight, Lars?
Doing good. Ready to talk a little high school wrestling. They've been focusing way too much on this international stuff, the older guys, so we don't need to worry about them right now. This is going to be a high school episode. We're going to have a little fun, and Godspeed to Nick trying to keep us in line tonight.
Yeah, so I was just told I was running this about, 2 minutes ago, so this might be kind of all over the place, but where are you thinking we want to start on this?
Yeah, you want to go Fab 50? Might as well get right into it and get the people riled up.
Right into your baby, the Fab 50. Let's do it. Kick it off, man.
Yeah, it's always an interesting list. When you're dealing with every weight and every class, there's just so many kids in the state of Iowa. It's hard to do. A lot of people come back with head-to-head things. That's why I try to explain at the top. Head-to-head's very minimal on this list unless you have two guys that are, neck and neck and they've met before. Obviously, it's going to come into play, but, it's results-driven. If you didn't place really high at the state tournament, if you haven't placed really high or placed at Fargo, placed at Super 32, maybe postseason national stuff like that, you're just not going to be on this list. I don't care who you beat that's on this list. If you're not placing high, you're not going to make it. So, this is really results driven. I'm looking at guys who have been, not necessarily all 1 year guys either. If you're an upperclassman, I want to see that you've placed 2, 3, 4, 2, 3 times. You've done other stuff. If you don't wrestle in the summer, don't be mad that you're not higher up on this list. This is an overall thing. It's not just folk. It's not just free. I'm just trying to come up with, who has the best results.
Yeah, I think the biggest point you said there is this is like a very macro look at stuff. It's not going to change too much one match, one way or the other. And then, even looking all the way down to 40 through 50, I see a handful of guys that are going to be right in the mix for a title next year. So there's no way you can make everyone happy with this. There's absolutely no way you could do it. Someone's always going to be thinking they should be higher, they should be lower. And at the same time, too, we behind the scenes, we do a lot of debating. I think a guy should be higher. You think he should be lower. We do a couple. I think we did 2 or 3 drafts of it. I contributed a little bit, but you mostly have the final say on this. So I think we got a pretty good list here. I don't know. We didn't get too much blowback on it, did we? We're always going to have a couple.
No, we heard from a parent or two, and I think 1, maybe 2 coaches, but for the most part, it was good comments. It's a fun thing to look at. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't mean a whole lot. I'm sure it's fun to see your name on this list, but it drives a lot of discussion. It's a neat thing for these kids to be able to see their name on this list, but there's a lot of good kids that didn't make it. There's a couple of guys that were state runner-ups this year that aren't on this 50. So, it's no shame to not be on here. And people arguing, whether they should be in the high 30s or low 30s or whatever it may be, that's a really fine line. There's not a lot of difference, in maybe 10 spots. Some of these guys are real close. It's razor thin. I know we argued about the top 10, and we also went back and forth about the bottom 10. It's all hard. There's nothing set in stone here. I think you could make a case for other people to be at every spot in this list. Obviously Colin Schreiber was number one, Fargo champ, Super 32. He's, one loss in high school, two-time state champ. This guy's done it all. But, you could argue and make cases for a guy like Aiden Reeves, who's, I believe, a 4-time Fargo All-American, 2-time state champ. He's one upset in the semis his freshman year from going for a 4th state title. So there's ways to argue this all over the place.
Yeah, I think, I always love lobbing some casual grenades in the conversation here. So I think just want to say Aiden Reeves is actually the guy that I had number one. I know we kind of talked on this, but at the same time, this isn't anything where I was like, you're totally wrong for having Schreiber one. Reeves was number one to me. Just watching him wrestle, he's just so dominant. I know a lot, and Schreiber is too, no doubt. And then obviously, the guy Schreiber beat in the finals is IAHSAA, so he's right up there at number 5. So, he's good. But, that was just one of the things we had. I don't know how much you want to get into maybe some of the talks we had on guys going higher or lower. What do you think?
Yeah, we can discuss a few guys, or, if there's anything that you think is questionable, I don't care. I got reasons for most everything on here, so.
And I think I do too. I don't have the actual results right in front of me, but that's kind of how we started off, is you're just without really, how I do it anyways. You have everything in the spreadsheet. I just kind of look at it and just see what doesn't look right or what does look right. And that's kind of some of the stuff we did there. I think we were pretty close on our top 3. I think we had DeVos a little higher right away. But, Broderson, another guy who, really he's only looked bad in one match with War at West Gym. Other than that, he's rolled everybody. And then you even look at, 6, 7, and 8, my 1A guys there. You got 2 guys that are probably going to be 4-timers, and then another guy who, in Heinrich, I think is still, I would love to see him compete against some of these big boys, because I think he can go with every single one of them. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Allard and Heinrich are, like I say, 1A guys out in western Iowa, maybe don't get the love that other people do. But, obviously Allard coming in and beating Oldham at War at West Gym was an eye-opener for a lot of people. Yeah, I know you and I have had plenty of conversations about him. We're both super, super high on Allard. Same thing with Heinrich. I know we tried to get him at War West Gym. Unfortunately, he was injured from the high school season, so took some time off. But still kind of hoping we can get him in an event and get him a big national matchup. Cale Happel's, he's a little bit of a hard case to me here too, of really, really good wrestler. Obviously, he's a 2-time state champ already. He's done all this great stuff. But to see the separation between him and Aiden Reeves when they wrestled head to head this year, it was just completely dominant match by Reeves. So, maybe in the back of my mind there, it's like, okay, how far back does Happel go from Reeves? I don't know. He's obviously a top 10 guy, but again, head to head comes a little bit into play when there's 2 guys that are up there that high. They're both 2-time state champs. They both have impressive resumes. That's the kind of situation where that can come into play. Even Allard and Oldham, they're 6 and 10. Obviously, it was a great match. Allard came out on top. He's got the 2 state titles. Oldham's got 1. So there's some separation there.
Where I kind of get in trouble sometimes is when you get into tier talk, like if you take all the state champs from this last year, there's going to be one kid who was the worst state champ. And that's probably not the best description of it, not the worst, but, and I think that's kind of what it is here. Like with Happel, the guy's a 2-time state champ. He's probably going to be a 4-timer. I would like to see him against, some of them tougher guys, though. I think unproven's not the word, because like I said, he's a 2-time champ, but he hasn't had maybe the toughest brackets yet. So I think, that's, and like you said with Reeves, it really wasn't that close. I know there's, they're a grade difference, so maybe Happel can make that jump in a year, but, and that's kind of the same thing like with Runyon there, he's really good, but the guy, he's never been in the finals. It's hard to bump him up. And I think we even in some of our talks, we had him up a little higher, and it's like, I just don't think we can put him ahead of a couple two-timers. So, and same thing with Oldham. He's, I think, one-time state champ, right?
Yep.
He's right there. He's beat some of those guys, but I think what we said was what weighed heaviest is your state finish, I believe.
Yeah, State and Fargo were definitely the top two. That's what kind of kept Runyon this high on the list as well, was he's a double All-American last year at Fargo. He placed in both styles. Obviously, I think most people would agree that probably was the toughest weight at the state tournament this year that he got third in. He had Stotts and Lara and Steffensmeyer. It was just loaded. So yeah, he's got some losses in high school for sure. Like say he hasn't been in state finals, but when you combine, his freestyle Greco background as well, that kind of helped him get up there. Like say Oldham's a one-time state champ, where some of these other guys have multiples, but he also was a state runner-up his freshman year as well. Goes out and plays the Super 32 last year, who a lot of people would argue that's the toughest tournament. So, these top 10 are all just absolute hammers. I think the top 10 to me was easy to put who's the top 10. It's just kind of figuring out that order.
Yeah, and then, moving on to 11 through 25 here, what I see is a whole list of guys who, they've proven quite a bit, but are they at their ceiling yet, or do they have more, they have a little bit more to grow? I believe it was both the Fisher boys. I can never keep the two straight, but maybe not came out of nowhere is the way to say that, but they've been solid right there. You got a guy like Caleb Krall, who won state last year, maybe took a step back this year. Kobe Seabrick, he's real fun to watch. If it wasn't for Alex Thompson, pretty sure Alex Thompson's weight there, we're out of season a little bit here. I'm trying to remember. Yeah. If it wasn't for him, he was easily number one there. I know I watched him wrestle Easton Larson a couple times, who was 3, and those matches were really never close. So, and even, I guess another 1A guy, Gabe Pauley, like I said, I'm the 1A guy. So, Gabe Pauley, I think he's got more to grow too.
Yeah, and then you got guys who kind of are a little bit different to rank here as well, like Anthony Zach. He's 2-time place winner, was able to get in the state finals this year. Maybe his in-state resume isn't quite as high as some of these guys. He goes out and wins a really good bracket at postseason nationals. That kind of helped him, jumped him up a little bit. And then you got a guy like Skylar Knofsker, who I've been super high on out of Ballard. But he's been injury prone, so he missed time his freshman year. He missed some time this year. He wrestled the state tournament pretty dinged up, ended up taking 4th. But again, really good bracket. He loses twice to Joe Kelly. Those are his only 2 losses. Who's going to Iowa. He's, I think Knofsker is a Fargo All-American. So, that kind of helped keep him in as well. So, you're getting into that territory of really talented kids. Like you say, maybe haven't quite hit their ceiling yet. But still think these guys got room to grow, and they're, really, really good wrestlers.
Yeah, I agree with everything you say there. Moving on to, even 26 through the mid-40s, I'm seeing a lot of guys who have had a chance to prove themselves and maybe haven't. Guys like I'm seeing Drake Doolittle, Josh Tibbetts. I know Tibbetts was right there 1-2 ranked a couple of years, and he's always had a early loss at the state tournament. Kind of same thing with Riley Wright. Had a couple close matches with your state champ Gable Fox last year. Kind of fell off a little bit at state. I think he was injured a little bit. I'm seeing a lot of guys like that in there. Again, and this is where people freak out and say, well, what do you mean they're choking or whatever? It's like, no, they're not choking. They're just, when you're, we don't just hand out those 1 and 2 rankings, in your class for no reason. So we know the guys are good, but then they get to state and maybe they don't finish quite that high. So that's what I'm seeing a lot of those guys in this range here.
Yeah, I completely agree. A guy like Tibbetts. I think Tibbetts is a kind of kid that's a top 10, 15 talent in the state. Straight up talent, tough as nails, great wrestler. He just hasn't quite made that jump. Some people would talk about last year, a kid like Drew Bennett, we knew was just a superb wrestler, just a great wrestler, but he had never won on that huge stage. You know, he didn't have the state title. He hadn't quite placed a Fargo. You know, he just hadn't pulled it. All of a sudden he goes out his senior year and just dominates. You know, he wins state. He's won postseason nationals. He's just doing all kinds of great things right now. You know, I think Tibbetts is the kind of kid who's capable of those things. Same thing Doolittle. Doolittle kind of broke out. You know, he was always good. Kind of broke out when he was an 8th grader, I believe. He beat Millage, now Blackus. You know, everybody's like, oh my God, who's this kid? He comes out, gets 3rd, gets 2nd, and then this year he kind of seems to take a little step back. You know, he took a handful of losses. He ends up 5th at the state tournament. So, you know, is Doolittle the kind of kid who's going to bounce back and have a huge year next year? Or is he kind of falling back to the pack? You know, it's tough to know. Riley Wright, I think we all thought was, you know, going to be competing for state titles by now. Obviously, he's been top 5 all 3 years, but he hasn't made that jump into the finals to that next level. You know, but then you have kids like Olenczak, who has taken that jump. Devil Dentist has taken that extra jump. Maybe they haven't been there quite as long, but they're in the state finals now. So kind of hard to figure out which direction some of these guys are going, but they're all those talented kids who are capable of, you know, reaching the state finals, winning state titles next year.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're pretty well on the same page there. And it, you know, it kind of showed with, you know, like we said, we kind of talked a couple of times about this list, and really we didn't disagree on that many. It was basically splitting hairs at the end. So, you know, moving on to the 40s through 50s, I think, you know, you can make a case for every one of these guys being on there, and I think you could make a case for the next 10 guys we left off probably to be on there too. So, it's really splitting hairs. It's guys that maybe placed once that have potential. And, you know, just, I mean, there's good kids on here. Like I said, you know, a lot of them are going to be state title contenders next year. So I guess what are your thoughts on 40 through 50 or so here?
Yeah, you know, these are probably the hardest ones to do because, like you say, there's at least probably 5 to 10 kids that aren't on this list who are probably, I mean, they're so close to some of these kids as well. You know, it is a little bit of splitting hairs. Some of it comes back to, you know, which direction are they going? A kid like Conrad Braswell was really tough to take off this list. 3-time state place winner. I think he's a really tough kid. Placed top 4 his first 2 years of high school. All of a sudden, as a junior, gets 8th. You know, I know he was in a tough bracket, took some, you know, didn't have any terrible losses necessarily, but getting 8th, you know, that's a step back. You know, back in our day, you know, when we were in high school, he didn't place. There was no 7th and 8th. You know, so you're looking at that going, you know, which direction is this kid going? And then you have, you know, other guys like Garrett Sims and Wade Mitchell and Thomas Bentley, kids like that are, again, going the other direction. They're just making that steady progression. They're placing higher each year. They're kind of making those jumps, beating better kids. You know, it's just kind of how you look at that list of they're all good. You know, Caden Kozlaric, Gabe Lewis, Briar Reeves. I mean, there's some really good names not in this list. Corey Van Ort, I know we had him on there at one point. He was one of the last guys to fall off. So I don't think there's a ton of separation from those bottom guys to those guys, but, you know, decisions had to be made, and this is the way that I kind of saw it falling.
Yeah, I think you can be pretty proud of the list you put together here. You know, like I said, we only had a couple people throw some shade at us, so I think when you're putting 50 guys on there, that's pretty good. And, you know, I guess, you know, we use the term experts pretty loosely, but I mean, you know, this is what we do. We've been doing this for longer than IAHSAA's been around. We've been looking at kids and seeing who's higher, who's lower, and you know, you put our rankings right next to that other website we're not going to talk about. It's right there. We're better in some weights. They're better at some. It just kind of depends on what year it is and what's going on. So
my Fab 50 list is better.
Oh yeah. Yep. We easily have the best Fab 50. No doubt. So I think we covered that pretty well. How we doing there, producer? I probably shouldn't be pulling back the curtain on this show here. Well, I was getting the head shake. No, I did get a thumbs up. So, all right.
No, you
Okay.
you really shouldn't be talking to me at all.
Well, don't talk to us then. Leave. All right.
Don't tell me what to do.
No complaints or anything on that? No.
Oh,
where we messed up?
There have been complaints, but we just won't mention them.
I love complaints, man. I love hearing them. All right. Okay. Now, a tournament called, State Freestyle and State Greco went on last weekend here at Southeast Polk. Do you know Lars? I guess I've kind of been out of the game, obviously, because I haven't wrestled freestyle or Greco for 10, 20 years. But has it been at Southeast Polk for a while, or is this the first year there?
It's been there for, I can't remember. This is second or third year anyway. A few years ago it was still at Iowa City West, so I can't remember exactly what year, but I know it was at least there last year, maybe the year before.
It seems to be a pretty slick setup. Obviously that gym is just ridiculous at Southeast Polk there. You got 8 mats with plenty of space, and you don't have a crazy amount of spectators at these tournaments too. So looks like there's plenty of room, and obviously, you really can't go wrong in Des Moines because it's about as centrally located as you can get. So, we weren't there. We didn't watch every match. Not gonna lie to you. But is there anything that kind of sticks out to you here as far as big matches or results?
There wasn't a whole lot that really, really stood out. There's a few surprises along the way. Nothing real crazy. I thought there were some really good brackets, some really fun matches. I know one that has been discussed a lot on Twitter. We've talked about a little bit is, Caleb Rathje and Robert Avila from Lisbon. It's kind of a controversial finish there. I know Lisbon fans are upset about it, and we're posting it online, and then I retweeted it, and it definitely got some discussion. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that one too much, but
I did watch it. I'd love to get your take on how you would have scored it.
I actually think I agree. I think they called it right. I agree with 4 red. The only thing you could argue is maybe, to me, 4 red, 2 blue. But to me, when you look at it, it's Rathje's shot. He has it elevated. He goes to trip. I know Avila grabs it and tries doing his move. I think it was already initiated. The action was already going when Rathje hit the trip, and I never saw Caleb actually expose. So I don't think there was any back there for Avila. I think it goes the other way. I give 4 red. The only argument I can maybe make would be that, correct throw 2 for Avila kind of mixed. I don't know. It's really hard, and freestyle gets interesting, but I think 4 red is probably the right call to me.
I guess I got one more question for you. Where was this at in the match when that happened?
It was right at the end, I believe. That was the decider. I think it was 4-4 when this happened.
So
then it did 4.
All right. So I've kind of said this a couple times, but I think it's worth repeating. In some of these matches like this here, like what this match comes down to is basically a 50-50 call up to the refs. Obviously in wrestling you need to have a winner and loser, but in the moment, like neither of these two is really better than the other one, or neither is worse than the other one, because it's coming to a referee's decision. And so often, we have to have a winner and a loser in wrestling, obviously, but I think this is just a moment where it's just totally dead even and just comes down to the ref's call. I could have seen it go either way. I actually feel like a lot of times you see Avila get 4 points there. Yes, it was Rathje's move, but there was just a slight little hesitation where Avila kind of took control. Really, the guy we need to be throwing under the bus here is the head ref, Jake Agnich, just standing halfway across the gym while it was going on. So I love getting his name out there and throwing him under the bus for that. But I saw he was kind of...
From what I understand, Jake actually, I think, called it 2, and the 2 side officials ended up calling the 4 red.
So Jake called it 2 for Avila is what you're saying, right?
I'm trying to remember. I saw him put it somewhere. I think he actually called just 2 red that neither guy exposed, and the other officials said 4 and gave him the exposure. And in looking at it, it's really hard to see. I really don't think Rathje exposed from what I could tell. And it's so fast and happening that it's kind of hard to tell if Avila ever did as either. But from what I understand, it was the 2 side officials ended up giving the 4. But we can give Jake crap too.
I think it's just one of those situations where, well, what's different about this and freestyle is, it's not like folk style where it's just either he took him down or he took him down. There's other, like you said, correct throw in there, maybe exposed, maybe didn't. So there's almost no wrong answer, I feel like. And if you're on the wrong end of it, obviously you're going to be pissed. So,
right.
But the other takeaway from this is this Robert Avila, man, he's going to be a lot of fun to watch next year from Lisbon.
Yeah, it's, I've had the chance to watch him just a couple times now. I saw him at Kid State up in Des Moines. Actually got to, hear something about the practice room, different, battles with kids in there, different things. And then, you watch him there. He ends up going and winning Greco, and he beat Rathje in the finals of Greco. So, yeah, for an 8th grader to be in this spot against a kid who's nationally ranked has been nationally ranked like Rathje, it's going to be fun watching him come in next year, throw him in the lower weights there for Lisbon along with 2 Happels now. They'll have Quincy in high school as well as Kale and Kobe Seabrecht. It's going to be pretty wild, watching Lisbon in those lower weights. So I think that'll be something fun to keep up on. I think Avila's going to be a stud. You've got those young guys like Avila. You've also got Hunter Garvin going out and just making a huge name for himself right now. So, Fausick, Carter Fausick. I mean, this class coming up, there's going to be some absolute hammers coming in. And, I don't know. Last year I kind of made the bold prediction on Twitter that Caleb Rathje was going to be the best freshman this year. I know a lot of Fort Dodge fans got a little rattled about that. I think I'd have a tough time picking one of these guys at this point. Obviously, I haven't seen Avila quite as much as I've seen some of the other guys. I've seen Fausick more, I've seen Garvin a little more, but I don't know who the best freshman is going to be next year. I think all of these, especially these 3 guys, there's a few others that are going to be stepping into lineups and being great right from the go.
Lars, I think you gave such a bad take there that my computer decided he didn't want to listen anymore.
Nobody wanted to, but I had to keep talking without you.
I know. All right, I'm back. Yeah, I don't know where you left off. I was just going to say, Avila's going to be a lot of fun to watch next year. So, really looking forward to that. And obviously, I'll get to see him a couple times, him being in 1A. Okay. Trying to get my track wrestling back up here for the results.
Another result that maybe didn't necessarily surprise me per se, but still kind of stood out to me was Biscaglia pinning Adam Allard. I think we were texting, or you texted a little bit right before that match going, oh man, this is going to be a lot of fun to watch. I can't wait. And then, not a lot of drama there. Biscaglia goes out, handles the business. And kind of funny, a couple weeks before that, Biscaglia lost to Happel at, I believe, Gilbert at the freestyle tournament. So, again, it's freestyle versus folk, going back to Fab 50. There's just so many different factors, the way guys match up. But Biscaglia taking care of Allard like that kind of surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, I was, I'm definitely in the Allard and the Heinrich camp from those Western Iowa guys, so I was really expecting that to be closer. So yeah, it kind of blew me away. I think actually I was texting after the match was over because I was busy. I wasn't just sitting by my computer watching, and I said, oh, this match will be fun. And then somebody responded back, most of the time it's not fun when you wrestle Biscaglia. So yeah.
For sure. But
looking through some of the cadet results, I see your boy Will Esmoil a little lower than I would have expected him.
He's been really focusing on track lately, I know, and got the top time in the state for shuttle hurdle, I believe I was told. He tweaked his back a little bit there in the, I think, semifinals and defaulted his way out after that to wait for track. But Ethan Vetrick came out and dominated him and then went on and won in the finals as well, had a really, really good tournament. he's not a kid who's had great folk style results, but, he's showing up here at Freestyle State and really was pretty dominant. So kind of interested to see how Vetrick does next year as well.
I think it's always fun looking at some of the track results, and you always have it's always heavyweights, good wrestling heavyweights that are in all the throwing events that are doing well. I guess going back a couple weights, another guy that you kind of got to watch out for next year is, I don't know how to say his name. He's from Logan Magnolia. I think it's Briar Reese.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is Reese.
He got second place there, finished ahead of Jake Neiman from OABCIG. He's another guy where, I don't think it was a fluke, but is he at his ceiling, just finishing second last year, or is he going to be a 1A guy that's going to, be a threat next year?
Yeah, I mean, he lost by Tech Fall to Ben Monroe in the finals, but Monroe's also a 2-time state finalist. So I don't know how much to read into that. Monroe's a little bit, he's a higher grade. He's a little bit more seasoned maybe. But, yeah, Reese is a guy I didn't know as much about coming into high school, but it's definitely a name that's been real interesting to me. Even going through the Fab 50, he was one of those guys, state finalist. You're looking through it, he's got to be at least considered. He's a name I think could easily jump in there pretty high next year. So I think he's definitely one to watch out for in 1A.
Yeah, and there's really wasn't anything crazy that I saw, I think, for the rest of the cadets. But you want to get into the juniors?
Yeah, we can do a little bit of juniors here.
All right, what do you got here? What's the biggest thing that stuck out to you?
I would say one of them was Gabe Christensen getting into the finals, beating Bryce Esmo. I was a little bit surprised, but then Boone McDermott at that weight just absolutely dominated. I thought there were some really good kids. Braden Wolf's a really good Freco guy. Garrett Sims is in there. Mike Hoyle. I mean, there's some pretty tough kids there. And in both styles, Boone McDermott just decked everybody. I don't know that he won a full match, so I thought that was pretty impressive. John McConkey, obviously we know he's good. I thought maybe Caleb Reeves. I know he really concentrates on Greco, a little bit of freestyle. He's always been more of a freestyle Greco guy. McConkey really had no issues with him, so that one kind of stood out to me just a little bit. Obviously, I like the big guys here, but I say those ones stood out. Ryan Steffen going double champ for Cresco. He's headed D2 Upper Iowa. He's one of those kids, again, we talked about, was always hanging around, was always really good. Senior year, he jumps up, wins state folk style high school, wins state freestyle, wins state Greco. So hats off to Ryan Steffen on a big year. That definitely stood out to me a little bit as well.
Yeah, looking through junior results, there really wasn't anything too crazy. I think, honestly, Esmoil might be the biggest one, like you said, but Boone McDermott, another guy where, this has been a theme throughout the podcast tonight, but is he at his ceiling or is he just going to keep climbing like he's been? So, it's going to be fun to watch that in the coming years. I think maybe Colby Shriver, got to give him a shout out. It looks like he had a pretty good tournament. The brother of Cullen Shriver, kind of in the shadows sometimes, but, freestyle state champ, so,
Yeah, Colby's a tough kid. Like I say, unfortunately, I hate that everybody refers to him kind of as Cullen's brother, that he's in that shadow, but tough kid, real tough kid. I'm kind of interested to see how he does at Fargo. Is he a kid capable, I think, of maybe even making a stand out there and really, kind of making his own name for himself. He hasn't won state yet. He's one of those guys that's been close. If he can go out to Fargo and make his way onto the podium, I think that would be a huge thing for Colby to really put his own name on the map there.
I think if I only could have watched one guy this entire tournament, it would have been Caleb Reeves. That guy's fun to watch, and I bet in freestyle it's even just compounded more, man. There are just people flying everywhere, whether it's him or the other guy. You never know sometimes, but
yeah, he's a wild one.
Same thing with I bet Tyrell Gordon. He probably threw a couple guys around this weekend. So yeah, I don't know. We kind of wrapped it up there on freestyle. Yeah, you have any more?
Really, I think my biggest takeaway from the weekend over anything was I don't know if you even looked at the girls' brackets, because there weren't hardly any girls' brackets. There was just absolute terrible attendance, just nothing there. I don't know. It's a little disturbing to me. I know that the girls have been showing up to a lot of tournaments. They've started actually having a few of their own tournaments. There's a lot of different people working on this. You know, I know Matt Waters is promoting a lot of girl stuff. Jess Philippus is doing a lot of stuff. Charlotte Bailey's trying to always do, you know, get these girls going, and they have numbers at events like Conflict of Carver and different things. And, you know, they're trying to push for their own state tournament in high school and things like that. And then they have Freestyle State, and there's just nobody there. And I don't know. It's really disappointing to me. I don't know what happened. I don't know where the disconnect is and why they weren't there. But I don't think this helps the case for them getting their own tournament and being their own sport. I know it's not folk style. Yes, there was good numbers in Des Moines this year at Kid State, but you know, you've got to show up to events like this, and I don't know what happened. I hope that this can grow. You know, I'm pulling for them to get their own tournament, for them to get their own stuff. I really do enjoy the girls wrestling. I coached a girl at state this year in Des Moines. I just don't know what happened. I'm really disappointed to see these low numbers. It looks like Eric dropped off here again real quick, so I guess I was talking to myself a little bit there again. But, you know, I think probably the next thing, maybe go to Greco a little bit. One of the kids we didn't hit on here in cadets is Brandon O'Brien. Yeah, he's at 88 pounds. There weren't a ton of kids in freestyle or Greco in his bracket. But he's the kind of kid that I think, again, Seabolt's won 88 the last 2 years. Colin Schreiber 2 years ago won 88 pounds of Fargo freestyle. Last year it was Drake Ayala. I honestly think Brandon O'Brien's the kind of kid who could go out there and have a shot at winning this weight out in Fargo. Real tough kid. He struggled a little bit in high school this year. Obviously he's not 106 pounds. He's wrestling 88 here, but he's definitely a name to keep an eye on. Brandon O'Brien, I think, is more than capable of making a huge run out in Fargo at 88 pounds. So,
yeah, he was definitely a guy you've heard of the last year or so. Was it Pan Ams or something, or Worlds? Yeah, that's a name I've been hearing for a little bit now. Back to your, you know, when you talk about the women's state tournament, I think a lot of that is the body bar is this weekend.
you know, if we're pushing on the state level, I'd like to see more of them stay here. You know, I know body bar is a big deal, but we got to make that push here as well. You know, obviously I didn't do anything to make that push, so I hate to, you know, go after anybody or anything like that. I just wish there was more of them showing up to a big tournament like that. And I hope it can keep growing, you know, keep moving in the right direction and not regress and numbers go low again.
I just had kind of a random thought that I remember now that we finished that up there. But I think last week on the podcast, Nick Ryder was discussing how he didn't think Oregon and Washington had, you know, many kids for Fargo and whatnot. And those are like two of the biggest states as far as Fargo and state goes. It's crazy how many people those guys take out there. So I just had that random thought, and I guess Nick was just the next guy that I wanted to take out. So
shots fired.
Hey, why don't you just leave me alone, all right? I don't know what I'm talking about. I just like to bug people, so just shove it.
It was great just listening to you just short circuit last week on that stuff, but
I was the one who had his wits about him.
Yeah, well, that's not saying much when Hager's with you, so. All right. We got any questions, man? Anything? Nothing?
Yeah, there have been a lot of questions. Have you not been paying attention to your Skype?
No,
Yeah,
I don't pay attention to that at all. So
you should probably jump on that real quick.
no, you just ask them to me.
Okay.
Then,
All right, who do you guys think All-American, or how many All-Americans do you think that Iowa gets at Fargo?
Oh God.
I should count that number. Oh.
Well, I guess I have no guess, but there's this website called IAHSAA that I believe every year puts out how many All-Americans there have been for the last 20 years. So
taking my line.
And, it's something that I started. I think Ross kind of took it over, but take a look at that, man. I'm sure it's going to be pretty much in line. I think we're pretty. What am I trying to say here? I don't think Iowa's any weaker or stronger than normal this year, so I think it's probably going to be pretty much right in line off the top of my head. And, a lot of it depends, too. I think more and more kids are foregoing Fargo and kind of going to the UWW juniors and cadets, that route. Back when I was wrestling, that wasn't really a thing. Fargo was pretty much the end all, but now some of these kids are trying to make world teams and whatnot. So yeah, there you go. There's me totally dodging the question.
Well, yeah, it's hard without really sitting down and breaking it down. I think cadet juniors combined just in freestyle, I don't think 15, 20 medals is out of the question. That's a pretty good number. That'd be a pretty high number, but I think there's quite a few kids that are capable of it. Again, the issue like you're talking about is, you look at these state brackets and you don't have a lot of the seniors. If you had Cade Lara and Nelson Brands and Alex Thompson and Brody Teskey and Michael Blockus and all these kids in there as well, obviously that number's going to jump. These guys are going to go out there. They're going to do great. Are any of those guys going to Fargo? So it's I don't know. It's a little hard to say. I think Iowa's capable of doing a ton of damage out there if we take everybody, if we had everybody in the fold, but we're not going to. There's still a lot of young guys. I think there's a lot of these cadets that are going to do really well. I'm actually, the more I get to know some of these younger kids, I really like some of these guys that were taken at that level. I do think there's a lot of juniors, Cade DeVos, Broderson, McDermott, McConkey, all those guys go. I think they're going to do really well. Obviously Shriver, kids like that, but I think we could do better. I'd like you said, it used to be everything. Fargo was the tournament. It was what everybody wanted to do. Maybe it's not quite that case anymore. A lot of these guys as seniors are moving on. They're heading to college right away, and they're kind of forgetting about that. So, I think 20 would be a good number for freestyle. I think we're capable of hitting it, but we'll see.
Did you ever wrestle at Fargo?
I did not. Nope.
I went out there my freshman year, and that was one of the coolest things I've ever done, because here I am, little old Eric Schares with, all the big dogs, and I thought that was pretty cool. I think there was one night where they had the junior finals, and I was just a cadet because I was a freshman. So I think Mark Mueller was the only one in the finals. So it was one of the last matches, and I'm sitting there watching it with some of the other guys we were with, and all of a sudden I look around, and it's just me with all the juniors. Apparently I was supposed to go back with the cadet bus. But I was like, I am not missing this. I'm watching all these big matches because you had all these guys that turned into, couple-time All-Americans in college. But I think I got yelled at by Zach Dominguez a little bit when I got back because they were wondering where I was. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd be the same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was awesome. All right.
All right, so I got 2 more questions. We'll save the big one for last.
Oh, God.
But we'll start with, are there any high school transfers that you guys have heard about during the offseason?
Robert Avila. He just moved into state. I don't know if you'd say how you would consider transfer. Not in-state transfer, but he moved into Iowa. Now at Lisbon, we've talked about him already. I think he's going to be really good. I don't know that I know of any others at this point that I've heard.
No, I guess
no.
I'm not saying there aren't.
Anyway.
Yeah, I haven't really heard of any either. I've vowed to stay off that other website that has a message board, so sometimes stuff gets thrown around there, but yeah. So there we go.
All right, then. The big one, Schares, I know you talked about this a little bit on your podcast, the number one podcast on IAHSAA.com, Shots Fired with Eric Schares and Matt Ryder. What do you guys think about seeding the state tournament?
I kind of gave my take a little bit. You give yours, Lars, and I'll pick up the pieces.
Well, do I want to give my take or just want to argue with you? I don't know. My preference, I think, is to not seed it. I can see arguments both ways. I think there are some reasons to seed it. I think 8's too many. I think if they're going to seed it at this point, we need to stick to something like 4, maybe separate just those top few guys into different quads, different quarters. My biggest question is, A, what's the seeding criteria? And B, who's going to make those decisions? You can't involve all the coaches. It'd be an absolute disaster. And who else? So who are people trusting? Is it athletic directors? They're involved. Is it, obviously, I don't think people are going to want media to do it. Who's your board? Who do you get that's unbiased, that's knowledgeable enough about every kid? I don't think you can have different I don't know. It's got to be one committee, and who follows it close enough, but yet is unbiased. And I don't know. I think it's going to be a really hard thing to figure out. And a lot of arguments doing rankings, Eric. You've been through this. There's so many arguments about, well, this kid beat this kid head to head. Or this kid, the biggest one is, my kid's undefeated. My kid's 40-0. Who has he wrestled? I could wrestle some of these schedules and do pretty well, and I'm old, out of shape, and suck to begin with. I was never good. And I could win. And then you have a kid somewhere else that's, maybe, 25-10, but this kid's wrestled everybody. He's never backed down from competition. And, how do you rank that? How do you seed that? Schedules are so different, and areas of the state can be different, and weights are so different. What's your criteria that's going to make across the board? Because they're going to have to set criteria. It becomes not an opinion. Rankings aren't necessarily opinion, but opinions play a factor. When it comes to that situation of a 30-0 versus a 25-5, that, sometimes we have to make that call that 25-5 kid has wrestled such a better schedule, has beaten more good kids. He might have more losses, but he's beaten a lot of good kids. Well, when you start seeding the state tournament, there's got to be a set criteria, and at times that's just not going to work. That you're going to have those arguments, and it's going to go the wrong way, and people are going to be upset. I don't know. I think it just turns into a disaster in a lot of ways. And the other thing to me is that's part of what makes it fun. You're there to beat everybody. I don't know too many kids that are going in there just to be there. There's a few that are happy to be at state. If you go that far, you want to win it. You want to, go as high as you can. But you're going to have to beat these kids at some point. And the other thing is, anybody who's been to the state tournament, those first round, second round, those are fun because you get some of those matches. You might see the top 2 wrestlers go second round or first round. But you know what? It's amazing, to be able to sit down first round of the state tournament and you see 2 kids that you've been watching all year. You're super high on all year. They're just dominated everybody. And they have to meet up right away. Yeah, it sucks that somebody has to lose, but you know what? That's part of the deal. Everybody's good there. Nut up and get it done. Beat the kid. You take that away and you start separating everybody. All of a sudden the first round sucks. Fans aren't watching. There's nothing to write about. There's no big interviews. There's nothing exciting about it. It becomes about just, semis and finals. And yeah, finals become great, maybe a little better. Maybe we can sell it a little better TV wise or something like that. But you're taking away a lot of that drama from those first 2 days. And to me, that's part of what makes it exciting. That's part of what makes the Iowa State tournament so great.
I agree with everything you said. I'm not saying don't do it. It's just you need to do it right. And like I said last night, I don't know how much I trust some of those guys that are in charge to get it right. There's every year there's always a handful of guys, always the same people. They're like, I could seed it. I know enough about all these guys, and it's like, well, I'd love to see you try, because you know what, you don't know. You just don't. You might know half the weight classes, and then you get to a couple where you're like, ooh, yeah, I don't know. Is this guy 2? Is this guy 4? Right off the top, you can't do any coaches. There's just no way to do it right with coaches. And also 8 kids needs to be thrown out the window. There's no way, absolutely no way you could do 8, realistically. Any record, that needs to be thrown out. I do not want to see record involved. You're going to have all kinds of people ducking, just to have good records. One thing, I guess I haven't really brainstormed it a ton in my head, but we talked about it a little bit on our text. I wouldn't mind maybe seeing like late December, early January, have like a couple sites around the state where you have not really qualifying tournaments, but like ranking tournaments, I guess, where kids can go and get points by placing high. Because that would that'd be a pretty big weekend, if everybody's going, all the good guys are going trying to get some points. I do not have a problem with saying, hey, first place from last year gets 16 points, second place 12, however, just doing straight placing. But I would even say I don't want points for qualifiers, because there are so many kids that sneak in that are, they would get teched by some of these guys that aren't even making it out of sectional sometimes. So,
but you're talking about like placing tournaments like that, or ranking tournaments. At this point, the state doesn't allow individuals to go to different tournaments than their team. It's team duels, team tournaments. Everything's involved with a team. And you might have some kid from a school that's not very good, but you have that 1 or 2 really good kids, and now the state has to change their entire policy and let these kids go to individual tournaments. And then, for one, it's different there, which, I'm okay with. I like having that, but then is it an invite thing, or how do you differentiate? Hey, the first 16 kids to sign up getting this ranking tournament, well, some of them might not be very good. Or does it become an invite, and then it's unfair to the kids who haven't proven themselves yet? You know what I mean? Like, this kid maybe didn't qualify for state next year, so we're not letting him in this ranking tournament. Well, then how is he supposed to get his name there? How is he supposed to earn that ranking? How is he supposed to qualify for a seat at state when he doesn't have any legs to stand on yet?
Yeah, I have not refined that.
You know what I mean? I'm not. Whatever, but I just think it's way too. I don't think there's been enough, and maybe there has. We're obviously not in these meetings in Boone, but I don't know that there's been enough of these discussions to really think that we're a year away from seeing the state tournament. I think this is something that the state put out there to say, hey, it's been this way a long time. We're at least going to kick the tires on this. We're at least open to change, but I really think people are taking it to heart and thinking, oh my God, they're going to see the state tournament, where I think it's more of them being open to discussions. I don't think this is anything that happens for 2-3 more years down the road, at least. I think there's a lot of things that got to get figured out. I think if they do implement it in the next year or two, I think it's a disaster.
Yeah, I'd like to see them maybe do and maybe this is something they've done, kind of internally. You do a little trial run of what it would have looked like, and you just don't tell anybody.
They have done that. I know there's been some of that. There's been some discussion. I know there's some track criteria that's been used in other states that has been put into play just to see how it would play out. But again, I think there's a lot more to figure out than just, hey, we think this would have worked out pretty well last year. There's still a lot of things going forward, a lot of things to change, a lot of things to refine.
I guess one final thing I had to say on that is, everybody make such a big deal about the kids that got bad draws and whatnot. But I made this point last night on the podcast. And if you don't place at the state tournament and you qualify, you are no better than the fourth best kid at that bracket, is what I said last night. And the more I thought about it today, I'm like, that's not even right, because for that to happen, you'd have to have 1, 2, 3, 4 in the same quad. If you were 4, you lose the 1, 2 beats 3, you lose the 3, but that's not even right, because at districts, that would mean that somebody beat 4 and somebody beat 3. So, I mean, really, if you're not placed at the state tournament, you're no better than the 5th or 6th best wrestler. If you're the best guy, you're the best guy. If you're the second best guy, maybe you get third. It's not like we're leaving, state runner-ups or having a bad draw and aren't placing because of that. It's like, if you're the second best guy, you're going to get third at least. So, I see you maybe disagreed with that. What was your thought on that?
You're not the best 4 guys that day. Yeah. I will say that. There are times that people have whatever circumstance happens. I think there's really good kids from time to time that don't place, but overall, I think you're right. If you're not placing at the state tournament, you don't have a whole lot of argument for saying you're one of the top guys there, because you didn't prove it. It's about results. It's not about, hey, I was 40-0 or whatever. I think I'm the best guy. Well, then go out there and beat everybody. It doesn't matter if you met this guy second round or you met him in the finals. If you're the best guy, prove it. Go beat him.
Mm. Yep. I think we covered it all, man. What do you think, Nick? Anything else? Any other questions?
No, there were a lot of comments, which we appreciate. Thank you, guys. Lars and Eric actually can't see your comments, which is a little
frustrating. I figured out how to pull them up now.
Oh, okay, that's good. But still, leave a comment. We'll try to get back to them. But yeah, I think you guys covered it all.
Yeah, I mean, if you strongly disagree with something I said, I'd love to hear it on Twitter. Pretty much everybody except for Jake Agnich, I don't want to hear it. You totally hosed that kid. So, yeah.
He just cost Robert Avila the #1 ranking to start the year next year, didn't he?
Yep, absolutely. Even though he's a freshman, we don't rank freshmen, right? So. We didn't take too many people out tonight. We could have taken Hager out more. I mean, what'd be the worst? He doesn't really talk to me anymore, but he doesn't really talk to me now because I annoy him too much, so he tries not to respond to me, I think. Kurt bailed on us tonight. He's on vacation. He used that excuse.
Now he's having a kid. Ross had a kid.
Yeah, Ross.
They're all falling like flies.
I mean, we got 4 kids between you and I, Lars, and here we are, so I don't know what their deal is, I guess, but yeah. So I don't know. Is this a great segue to end it, or is this like the clunkiest ending ever?
No, it was great. Good job, guys.
Yeah. So rate and subscribe us. Direct any negative comments at Tony. Any positive stuff, you can send it my way or to Lars or even probably Nick. So, what are you laughing at?
It's so bad.
Yeah. Well, what do you want me to do?
No, it's so bad it's good.
I'm sabotaging this on purpose so that way people will be like, I can't listen to this anymore. I'm going to listen to Shots Fired podcast. So
sure.
That's my idea.
Good
all right.
thinking.
Yep. Anything else? Anyone? Last call.
Follow us on social media, man. IA Wrestle. We're everywhere.
All right. This was episode 117, Potentially Dangerous. Thanks for listening, guys.